We deeply appreciate each and every one of you. We'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The sharp smell of motor oil filled the air as Edward Carter slid out from under a 2010 Honda Accord. His overalls bore fresh smudges, adding to the patchwork of grease stains that no amount of scrubbing could remove. The clock on the wall of Carter's auto shop read 6:47 p.m., marking another long day at work. "Hey boss, should I lock up?" Nathan, his youngest mechanic, called from the front. Edward grabbed a red rag to wipe his hands. "Go ahead. I've got some paperwork to finish." As usual, the routine unfolded. Tools clicked into drawers, hydraulic lifts lowered with groaning sighs, and the shop slowly emptied out. Once the last employee left, Edward unlocked his office and closed the door quietly behind him. Hidden behind a stack of old repair manuals sat something incongruous, a sleek laptop. He powered it on, revealing an array of cryptocurrency charts he had been monitoring all day. "Come on, let's go," he murmured, logging into his digital wallet. The familiar string of numbers appeared, his Bitcoin address, holding what he hoped was his path to a better life. 10,000, he muttered. My little escape plan. The sudden sound of tires crunching outside made him minimize the screen. Through the office window, he spotted his wife Olivia's Lexus pulling into its usual spot. Her silhouette lingered in the car briefly, phone pressed to her ear. "No, Daniel, I can't meet tonight." Her voice carried faintly through the thin walls. "He's still here. Next week, okay?" Edward clenched his jaw, his focus drifting back to the screen. The ache in his chest felt as familiar as the growing distance between him and his family. "Dad!" The voice startled him. His 16-year-old son, Ryan, stood at the door, careful not to step on the oil-stained floor. "Mom says dinner's ready. Are you coming home, or what?" Edward closed the laptop with a sigh. "I'll be there soon." "How was school?" Ryan shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "Fine. Just hurry up. Sarah's got cheer practice, and Mom has to drop her off." The drive home was quiet, broken only by the faint hum of a local radio station. The streets of their Oakwood Heights neighborhood, once so familiar, now seemed foreign. At home, Sarah sat scrolling through her phone with the intense disinterest only a 14-year-old could muster. Olivia moved efficiently around the kitchen, still wearing her corporate demeanor like armor. The Bakers called about their car. Edward offered, breaking the silence. "Interesting," Olivia replied without looking up, placing store-bought chicken on plates. "Ryan, how was your college meeting?" Ryan brightened. "Mr. Sanders says I've got a shot at Stanford. He knows people in admissions." Olivia beamed. "Daniel's been so helpful. Such a successful man, and still finds time to mentor students." Edward frowned. "I thought we agreed I'd handle Ryan's college planning. I've been saving." "What? With your repair shop?" Sarah snorted. "Mom says Mr. Sanders earns more in a day than you do in a month." "Sarah," Olivia said softly, though there was no real reproach in her tone. Later that evening, Edward sat in his cramped home office, little more than a converted storage closet, staring at his crypto wallet. The numbers remained unchanged, yet their promise seemed brighter than ever. He tried to explain it to Olivia once back when cryptocurrency was still new. "It's the future," he'd said. "Completely decentralized digital finance." She had smiled that dismissive smile he had grown used to. "Stick to what you know, Edward. Cars need fixing. That's real. This digital money of yours? Just a pipe dream." Now, as Edward checked the current Bitcoin price, a bitter smile crossed his face. His fantasy was worth more than Daniel Sanders would make in 10 years. But nobody knew that. Not his dismissive wife, not his indifferent children, not even his best friend Matthew. The weight of his secret fortune felt like a physical burden, tempting him to reveal everything. But something always held him back. Maybe it was pride, or perhaps the creeping suspicion that his family's affection depended on social status and bank balances. Either way, he stayed silent, letting the blue glow of the laptop illuminate his face in the darkness of his small office. A text message lit up his phone. "Hey man, we need to talk. That silver Mercedes keeps showing up on your street. Matthew." Edward closed his eyes, the crumbling pieces of his life forming an increasingly clear picture. The question wasn't if his world would fall apart, but when, and whether his secret digital fortune would save him, or merely offer a front-row seat to watch it all collapse. Matthew Grant's weathered pickup truck rumbled into Carter's auto shop early Monday morning. He carried 2 cups of coffee from their favorite diner, a tradition spanning 2 decades of friendship. The aroma of fresh dark roast cut through the lingering scent of motor oil and rubber. Black, 2 sugars, Matthew said, setting a cup on the workbench where Edward was hunched over a transmission. And there's something else you need to hear. Edward straightened, his back cracking from hours spent bending over engines. If it's about Mrs. Fletcher's Audi, I already ordered the parts. Not about cars. Matthew leaned against the workbench, his expression unusually serious. Been meaning to tell you for days now. That silver Mercedes S-Class? Spotted it outside your house again last night. 3rd time this week. The wrench in Edward's hand slipped, clattering onto the concrete floor. He picked it up slowly, trying to steady his voice. Probably one of Olivia's work friends. You know how she's been networking since the promotion. At 11 p.m.? Matthew's eyebrows rose as he pulled out his phone, showing a photo of the car. And I've been in this business 30 years. That's a 2024 Mercedes-Benz S580 custom order. Only one like it in this part of town. How do you know that? Edward asked. Because it was in here last month. The guy needed an oil change. Wouldn't let anyone but me touch it. Matthew's voice softened. Owner's name is Daniel Sanders. Ring any bells? Edward froze, his coffee cup midway to his lips. The name lingered in the air like exhaust fumes. Investment banker. Works at Jefferson and Company. Matthew hesitated. Yeah, real big shot. Spent the whole time on his phone talking about a deal worth millions. Kept mentioning someone named Olivia. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead as Edward absorbed the confirmation of his suspicions. A memory from last week surfaced. Olivia laughing at Daniel's jokes during a parent-teacher conference, her hand on his arm, their shoulders brushing. It all clicked into place. Dad! The voice startled Edward. He turned to see his 16-year-old son, Ryan, striding into the garage wearing a Lakers jersey Edward didn't recognize. Ryan? You're supposed to be at school. Forgot my history textbook at home, Ryan replied, glancing at his phone. Mom said you could drive me back to get it. She's in meetings all day. Matthew gave Edward a knowing look. I'll finish up the Johnson transmission, he said quietly. The drive home was tense, Ryan texting constantly. At a red light, Edward glanced at the screen, a group chat named Lakers Night. His son quickly tilted the phone away. Inside the house, while Ryan rummaged upstairs, Edward noticed changes he'd been too distracted to see. New paintings on the walls, a designer briefcase by the door that wasn't his. A faint trace of an unfamiliar cologne lingering in the air. Found it, Ryan called, thundering down the stairs. He paused halfway, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, I'm still coming. Mom says Mr. Sanders is getting courtside seats. Dad? Nah, he's just giving me a ride. He doesn't know. Edward stood still, letting the whispered conversation wash over him. His son's voice dropped even lower. Mom says she's working late again. Yeah, the usual excuse. No, he's clueless. Palace tickets are like $1,000 each. He could seriously, Chris? Dad's such a... The rest of the sentence trailed off as Ryan noticed his father standing there. An awkward silence filled the air. Ready to go? Edward asked quietly. Back at the shop, Matthew was waiting. One look at Edward's face told him everything. You remember that Bitcoin stuff you were into? Matthew asked suddenly. The digital money you tried explaining years ago. Edward tensed. What about it? Just wondering if you ever did anything with it. Might be worth something now. For a brief moment, Edward considered telling his oldest friend everything. About the 10,000 Bitcoin, about the fortune he had kept secret, about the power he held but never used. Instead, he picked up his wrench and slid back under the waiting car. Nah, he said, his voice echoing under the undercarriage. Just internet funny money, right? The rest of the day passed in a blur of oil changes and brake jobs. Every phone notification made him flinch, wondering if it was Olivia with another flimsy excuse about working late. Every car that pulled into the lot had him glancing to see if it was a silver Mercedes. At closing time, Matthew lingered. Want to grab a beer? Talk about. Can't. Edward interrupted, already heading to his office. Got paperwork. But instead of invoices, he pulled up his crypto wallet. The familiar string of numbers offered cold comfort as he listened to the sounds of his co-workers leaving for the day. In the dimly lit shop, surrounded by the tools of his trade, Edward Carter sat alone with his secret fortune, wondering when his family had decided that grease-stained hands weren't enough to hold on to them. Sunday morning arrived with an unusual stillness in the Carter household. Edward sat at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, watching dust particles float in the slanted sunlight. The usual rush of church preparations was absent. No hurried breakfasts, no arguments about ties, no scramble for misplaced books. The sharp click of heels on hardwood announced Olivia's arrival. She emerged from the bedroom, wearing a tailored brunch outfit worth more than a week of auto repairs. "The kids and I need to talk to you," she said, her voice carrying the calculated calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment. Footsteps sounded on the stairs as Ryan and Sarah appeared, dressed with the same polished elegance as their mother. They positioned themselves behind her like sentinels, their faces blank masks of indifference. "I've been wondering when this conversation would happen," Edward said quietly, his eyes landing on a thick envelope on the counter that hadn't been there the night before. "Legal documents," he noted, catching the letterhead peeking out. "Let's not drag this out." Olivia placed the envelope on the table between them. "I want a divorce." The words dropped like a fallen engine block, but Edward's face remained calm. "I assume Daniel helped you prepare these?" A flicker of surprise crossed Olivia's face. "You knew. Silver Mercedes. Late-night meetings. Lakers tickets. Give me some credit. I fix cars for a living. I'm not blind." Ryan shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah stepped forward. "Mom's been miserable for years. Mr. Sanders actually appreciates her. Appreciates her enough to help her sneak around?" Edward's voice remained steady, his gaze locked on the envelope. "Don't act self-righteous," Olivia snapped. "Daniel's everything you're not. Successful, sophisticated, ambitious. He's already arranged for us to move into his Beverly Hills estate next week." "Beverly Hills," Edward echoed, thinking of his laptop hidden in the shop, of his digital wallet worth more than any mansion. "And the kids?" "We're going with Mom," Ryan declared, chin lifted defiantly. "Why would we stay in this dump with a loser like you?" The word loser hung in the silence of the kitchen. Edward's hands remained steady as he opened the envelope, scanning the divorce papers inside. The prenuptial agreement they'd signed 17 years ago was attached, a relic from when Olivia's family insisted on protecting their modest assets from the mechanic their daughter had chosen. "I had my attorney review everything," Olivia said, producing a pen. "Marcus says it's straightforward. I keep my assets, you keep yours." "Marcus Bennett?" Edward asked, recognizing the lawyer's name from glossy local ads. "Julian's connections again?" "Just sign the papers, Dad," Sarah sighed, already scrolling through her phone. "We've got brunch reservations at the Ivy." Edward studied his children's faces, Ryan's defiance, Sarah's indifference, the strangers they'd become while he was busy building his secret fortune. He thought of the crypto wallet, of the power he held to silence them all. One bank statement could obliterate their assumptions, crush their smugness, change everything. Instead, he picked up the pen. "No fight over assets?" Marcus Bennett asked hours later in his downtown office, surprised by Edward's easy acceptance. "No claims against Mrs. Carter's investments with Mr. Sanders?" "Let her keep her assets," Edward replied, signing the final page. "I'll keep mine." Olivia's triumphant smile faltered slightly at his calm. "That's it? All these years and you're just letting go? Isn't that what you wanted?" Edward stood, straightening his old jacket. "A clean break." "Dad!" Ryan called as Edward reached the door. For a moment, something like doubt crossed his son's face. "That's really all you have to say?" Edward paused, his hand on the doorknob. The truth burned in his throat about the Bitcoin, about the millions, about the future he could give them. But as he looked at his family, dressed in their expensive clothes, clustered around Julian Sanders' polished promises, He saw the choice they'd already made. Your mother's right, he said finally. You deserve the life you want. The life I apparently couldn't provide. The door closed behind him with a soft click. In the elevator, Edward pulled out his phone, checking his crypto wallet one last time. The numbers glowed back at him. A secret fortune that could have changed everything. Or, as he realized while the elevator descended, perhaps nothing at all. Outside, Los Angeles traffic flowed past Marcus Bennett's prestigious office building. Edward's old truck sat among the luxury cars like a period at the end of a finished sentence. He climbed in, the familiar scent of motor oil, and honest work surrounding him. The radio crackled to life with the turn of the key, playing an old song about loss and redemption. Edward pulled into traffic, leaving behind the gleaming office tower where his marriage had officially ended. His phone buzzed with messages, probably Matthew checking in, or maybe his soon-to-be ex-family making final demands. He left them unanswered, driving instead toward his auto shop. There was work to be done, cars to fix, and a future to build, just not the one anyone expected. The gleaming glass facade of the Los Angeles Convention Center reflected the morning sun as Edward adjusted his newly purchased suit. 6 months had passed since the divorce, and the annual Blockchain Technology Summit marked Edward's first step into a world far removed from engine grease and repair manuals. First crypto conference? A man in his early 30s dropped into the seat beside him during the morning keynote, his laptop displaying complex code sequences. I'm Brad. Brad Rivas. That obvious, huh? Edward smiled, noting Brad's casual confidence in this environment. The suit, Brad said, gesturing to his own jeans and hoodie. We're all about breaking traditional finance norms here. Though I have to say your wallet address made quite a splash in our developer forums last week. Edward tensed. My wallet. Relax, Brad lowered his voice. The beauty of blockchain is transparency. When a dormant whale wallet from 2010 suddenly shows signs of life, people notice. Not many holders from that era still have their keys. Before Edward could respond, the keynote speaker announced a break. Brad handed him a business card. I've got an idea I'd like to run by you. Something that could revolutionize blockchain security. Over lunch in a quiet corner of the conference hall, Brad outlined his vision. His fingers flew across his laptop, displaying prototype code for a security protocol designed to protect crypto assets from rising digital threats. The technology's solid, Brad explained, but I need someone who understands both the old and new worlds of finance. Someone who held through the early days. And you think that's me? Edward asked. I think you're someone who sees value others miss, Brad said, his eyes sparking with enthusiasm. Plus, my background check showed you own an auto repair shop. That tells me you understand systems, troubleshooting, and most importantly, how to build trust. The conference room had emptied, leaving them, surrounded by abandoned coffee cups and program booklets. Edward studied Brad's prototype, recalling the nights he had spent learning blockchain technology while his family slept. Why me? There are bigger investors out there. Because you're not just an investor, Brad replied, closing his laptop. You're a builder. I saw your transaction patterns, small, regular Bitcoin purchases over years. That shows patience, vision, and, most importantly, that you understand value isn't just about quick profits. A notification lit up Edward's phone, a news alert about Julian Sanders' latest investment success. He silenced it without reading further. When can you start? Edward asked. 3 months later, their blockchain security firm occupied the 10th floor of a downtown high-rise. Brad's team of developers worked alongside former cybersecurity experts, creating something unprecedented in the crypto space. Mr. Carter? His new assistant's voice came through the intercom. Iris Casey from Financial Dynamics magazine is here for your appointment. The journalist wasn't what Edward expected. Instead of the aggressive reporter he had anticipated, Iris Casey carried herself with quiet intensity, her notebook already open as she sat down. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she began. Though I suspect you know why I'm here. Enlighten me. She placed a document on his desk, blockchain transaction records. Your wallet holds one of the largest private Bitcoin fortunes in existence. Yet until 6 months ago, it sat untouched for years. Now you're launching a security firm that's attracting attention from major crypto exchanges. You've done your homework. The interesting part isn't the money, Iris said, leaning forward. It's the timing. Right when most early Bitcoin holders were selling, you were quietly buying. Through market crashes, through the mining rewards halving, through every setback, you kept accumulating. Edward studied her carefully. What's your angle, Miss Casey? The truth. She met his gaze steadily. The crypto world is full of overnight successes and spectacular failures. But you're neither. You're something far more interesting, patient capital that finally decided to move. Brad knocked and entered, carrying fresh security protocol tests. He stopped short at the sight of the journalist. Sorry, I didn't realize. No, stay, Iris said, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the code on his tablet. I'd love to hear about the technical side. For the next hour, they talked. Brad explained their security innovations while Edward shared his vision for making cryptocurrency safer and more accessible. Iris's questions were sharp and informed, showing a genuine understanding of blockchain technology. As the interview wound down, she asked one final question. Why come out of the shadows now? Why not stay anonymous like Satoshi? Edward walked to his office window, looking out at the city where his old life felt increasingly distant. Because sometimes staying hidden means staying small. I'm done with that. After Iris left, Brad lingered. You sure about this? Once her article runs, everything changes. Everything already has, Edward replied, turning back to his desk. A framed photo that once showed his family now displayed the Bitcoin white paper. Time to build something new. His phone buzzed with another news alert about Julian Sanders' latest social appearances. This time, he didn't just silence it. He deleted it entirely, shifting his focus to the security protocol specifications Brad had brought. In the distance, barely visible, stood his auto repair shop, a reminder of where he had started. But up here, surrounded by the hum of servers and the limitless possibilities of blockchain technology, Edward Carter was finally building the future he had always envisioned. 5 years had transformed the 10th floor into a testament of digital success. Edward's blockchain security firm now occupied the entire building, its logo glowing against the Los Angeles skyline. The auto repair shop remained below, though now it served as an innovation lab where Brad's team tested hardware security modules. Mr. Carter? His receptionist's voice carried urgency. There's a Hope Daniels here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent, about Julian Sanders. Edward looked up from the security audit reports on his desk. That name hadn't crossed his path in years, though occasional society page photos of his ex-family's glamorous life still surfaced in the media. Send her in. Hope Daniels entered like someone accustomed to executive offices, though her nervous energy betrayed her composed exterior. Her designer suit bore yesterday's wrinkles, and her manicured nails tapped an anxious rhythm on her portfolio. Thank you for seeing me, she began, declining the offered seat. I was Mr. Sanders' executive assistant at Jefferson and Company until yesterday morning. Was? Edward asked. I resigned after finding these. She placed a USB drive on his desk. Mr. Carter, the investment firm is a front. Julian's been running a massive Ponzi scheme, and it's about to collapse. Edward's fingers rested on the drive. Why come to me? Because. You're the only one who got out clean, Hope replied, finally sitting as exhaustion creased her features. Everyone else, your ex-wife, your children, hundreds of clients, they're all trapped in his web. The SEC is closing in, but they're moving too slowly. By the time they act, the money will be gone. Los Angeles traffic hummed 40 stories below as Edward considered her words. What makes you think I can help? Because you understand both worlds, Hope said, pulling documentation from her portfolio. The traditional finance system Julian exploited and the blockchain technology that could trace his transactions. She hesitated. And I've seen how he treated your family. Used them as props for his social climbing. Edward reached for his phone. Brad, come to my office. Bring your forensics team. To Hope, he said, start from the beginning. Leave nothing out. Over the next hours, Hope unraveled a scheme breathtaking in its audacity. Brad's team worked in real time, tracing the money through a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts. Classic Ponzi structure, Brad explained, projecting his findings. But he's innovated use crypto exchanges to wash funds, then reintroduce them as investment returns. Most victims don't realize their profits are just other people's. Principal. How many victims? Edward asked. Hundreds, Hope replied, her voice cracking. Including everyone at your ex-wife's firm. Julian convinced them to invest their retirement funds, promising guaranteed returns. But look at this. She pulled up internal documents showing massive withdrawals scheduled for the coming week. He's preparing to run. Once these transfers clear, there'll be nothing left. Edward studied the transaction schedules. We need verification, something that'll stand up in court. Already on it, Brad said, pulling up another screen. I know a PI who specializes in financial fraud. Ex-FBI. Works with the SEC. Guy named Enrique Avery. Make the call. Enrique Avery arrived within the hour, a former federal agent whose casual demeanor belied razor-sharp instincts. He spread Hope's evidence across the conference room table, cross-referencing it with his own sources. Your assistant's right, he confirmed, looking up from his tablet. This is probably the largest private investment fraud I've seen since Madoff. But Julian's smart. He's learned from others' mistakes. Can you prove it? Edward asked. With what she's provided? Enrique gestured to Hope's documents. It's a start, but we need more. Bank records, internal communications, client lists. I have access to the firm's servers, Hope offered. But only until they process my resignation tomorrow morning. Brad cracked his knuckles. Give me 4 hours with those servers. I'll build a blockchain analysis tool to track every transaction. The night blurred into a frenzy of activity. Brad's team wrote code while Enrique's contacts at the SEC stood ready. Hope guided them through Jefferson and Company's digital infrastructure, her insider knowledge proving invaluable. Dawn broke over Los Angeles as the final pieces fell into place. Enrique spread the completed evidence portfolio across Edward's desk. It's all here, he announced grimly. Wire transfers, fake account statements, the whole scheme. Julian's been paying old investors with new investors' money, skimming millions off the top. When this breaks, everyone loses everything, Hope finished. Including your children's college funds, Mr. Carter. Julian convinced Olivia to invest all their assets with him. Edward stared at the city awakening below, remembering Ryan's sneering dismissal years ago, Sarah's indifference, Olivia's certainty that she'd chosen the better man. How long, he asked. Days. Maybe hours, Enrique replied. Once those withdrawals, we could move faster than the SEC, Brad interrupted, leaning forward. Use our blockchain tools to freeze his crypto assets before he can transfer them offshore. No, Edward's voice was firm. We do this right. Everything documented. Everything legal. He turned to Enrique. How quickly can you get this to your SEC contacts? I can have a team here by noon. Do it. Edward looked at the evidence of Julian's fraud. The same documents that would shatter his ex-family's gilded life. They chose this path. Now they'll learn where it leads. As his team mobilized, Edward moved to his private office. Through the window, he could see his old auto repair shop, where he'd first learned the value of honest work. The irony wasn't lost on him. The mechanic they had dismissed as beneath them now held the evidence of their downfall. His phone lit up with a message from Iris Casey. Heard rumors about Jefferson and Company. Need to talk. Not yet, he typed back. But soon. Very soon. The headline exploded across every major financial news network. Breaking, Jefferson and Company. CEO Julian Sanders arrested in massive investment fraud. Edward watched from his penthouse office as the story unfolded on multiple screens, each channel racing to outdo the others with revelations of the scandal's scope. The SEC raided their offices an hour ago, Brad reported, tablet in hand. They're calling it the largest investment fraud case of the decade. Estimated losses over $2 billion. The news feed showed Julian being led out in handcuffs, his perfectly tailored suit wrinkled from the early morning arrest. Behind him, FBI agents carried boxes of documents from Jefferson and Company's headquarters. Mr. Carter, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Hope Daniels is here with the latest updates from the SEC task force. Hope rushed in, her former professional polish replaced by focused intensity. They've frozen all assets connected to Jefferson and Company, she said. The forensic accountants are already going through everything we provided. What about the clients? Edward asked, though he already knew the answer. Total devastation, Hope replied, pulling up the preliminary report on her tablet. Julian convinced most clients to consolidate all their investments with him. Some lost their entire life savings. The Beverly Hills estate, all the properties marketed as investment opportunities, they're being seized. A different alert caught Edward's attention, a local news broadcast showing familiar faces. Through the station's cameras, he watched his ex-family being escorted from the Beverly Hills mansion. Sarah, now a high school senior, clutched her designer bags while Ryan, home from his first semester at USC, argued with the federal agents. All their assets are frozen, Brad confirmed quietly. The investigators found Olivia's signature on several key investment documents. She'll be questioned, though it looks like she was another victim. The elevator chimed, announcing Iris Casey's arrival. The financial journalist who had been following Edward's rise in the crypto world now had an even bigger story breaking. I need your statement, she said without preamble, her recorder already running. You were Julian Sanders' connection to this world before he married your ex-wife. Did you see any signs of the fraud? No comment, Edward replied, but gestured for her to stay. They had an understanding. She'd gotten exclusive access to his legitimate success story, and now she'd have the first detailed account of Julian's downfall. His phone buzzed with notifications. Social media was exploding with updates from his children's accounts. Sarah's Instagram story showed her tearfully packing her things, while Ryan's Twitter feed had shifted from boasting about his privileged lifestyle to complete silence. The SEC wants to interview you, Hope mentioned, checking her messages. As Julian's former connection to the investment world, they need to establish your non-involvement. Schedule it, Edward nodded, and get our legal team to prepare all documentation showing the complete separation of our assets since the divorce. Brad's team worked through the day, providing blockchain analysis that traced Julian's complex web of cryptocurrency transactions. Each revelation painted a picture of calculated deception spanning years. Look at this, Brad pointed to a transaction timeline. He started small, using early investors' profits to draw in bigger fish. By the time he met your ex-wife, he was already running out of ways to sustain the scheme. The news coverage continued nonstop. Interviews with devastated clients, financial experts analyzing the scheme's structure, and social commentators discussing the implications for Beverly Hills' elite social circle. Through it all, Edward sat in his office, watching his ex-family's carefully constructed world unravel. Their tuition payments have been flagged, Hope reported late in the afternoon. USC's financial office is reviewing Ryan's enrollment. Sarah's private school has already suspended her attendance pending payment verification. Iris, who had been quietly observing and taking notes, finally spoke up. The contrast is striking. While they're being evicted from their mansion, you're sitting in your penthouse office, your blockchain empire more valuable than ever. Planning to comment on the irony? No, Edward replied, turning to the wall of screens showing the ongoing coverage. The story isn't about me, but in many ways it was. Every news report mentioned his connection. The ex-husband who had chosen a different path, building legitimate success, while Julian constructed his house of cards. Sir, his assistant called through the intercom again. Your ex-wife's name is trending on social media. Several news vans are gathering outside the Beverly Hills property. Edward watched another broadcast showing Olivia being escorted to a waiting car, her designer sunglasses failing to hide her distress. The same woman who had dismissed his internet funny money years ago had entrusted everything to Julian's traditional investment schemes. The SEC has scheduled the interview for tomorrow morning, Hope confirmed. They'll want to know about any conversations you had with Julian during the divorce proceedings. Give them everything, Edward instructed. Every document, every interaction, every detail showing we had no part in his fraud. As evening fell over Los Angeles, the screens in his office continued to flash updates. Julian's arrest, the frozen assets, the growing list of victims. His phone remained silent. No desperate calls from his ex-family. No pleas for help. Their pride, it seemed, remained intact even as the world collapsed. Iris packed up her notes, pausing at the door. Need anything else for the story? Edward looked at the city lights below, at the distant outline of his old auto repair shop where it had all started. Just make sure you tell the truth. All of it. The journalist nodded, understanding the layers in his request. Tomorrow, her exclusive story would run alongside the breaking news of Julian's arrest. The contrast would be unavoidable. The honest mechanic who had built a blockchain empire versus the sophisticated fraudster who had destroyed countless lives. For now, Edward Carter sat in his penthouse office, watching his ex-family's perfect world crumble on live television. Their fall as public as their rise had once been elegant. The lesson they had learned about true value and honest work had come at a devastating price. Meanwhile, Manuel Lamb studied the cascade of desperate messages flooding his clients' communication channels. As Edward Carter's financial advisor, Manuel Lamb had helped structure the crypto empire's rapid expansion. But this morning's task was more personal. Another call from Ryan, Manuel reported, tablet in hand. That's the fifth one this week. Sarah's Instagram has shifted from her usual content to public appeals for help. And Olivia, she's been reaching out through every mutual contact in your address book. Edward stood at his office window, the same spot where he'd watched Julian Sanders' arrest broadcast live 3 weeks ago. Show me. Manuel pulled up Ryan's latest voicemail. The speaker filled the office with his son's voice, no longer sneering, but cracking with desperation. Dad, please. We need help. Mom's a mess. We're about to be homeless. The FBI seized everything. They're saying Julian used our accounts to move money around. I can't even access my tuition payment for next semester. Please, just call me back. Switching screens, Manuel displayed Sarah's Instagram feed. Gone were the poolside photos at the Beverly Hills mansion, replaced by increasingly frantic posts. Can anyone help? We have nowhere to go. All our accounts are frozen. Mom can't stop crying. Dad, if you're seeing this. Olivia has been particularly persistent, Manuel continued, scrolling through messages. She's contacted Oliver at the auto shop, Brad at the office, even tried reaching Iris Casey to arrange an interview. And what do you make of all this? Edward asked, though the slight curve of his lips suggested he already knew. Manuel's thoughts. Manuel raised an eyebrow, a gesture perfected over years of navigating the crypto market's volatility. I assume you have a plan? Pull up the Ford's article draft. The document appeared on the wall screen. A comprehensive piece Iris had been working on for months, detailing Edward's rise in the crypto world. The headline weighted like a loaded gun. From mechanic to crypto billionaire. The incredible journey of Edward Carter. It's ready to publish whenever you give the word, Manuel noted. Though the timing, a notification chimed. Another message from Olivia, this time through Hope Daniels. Edward, please. We've lost everything. The courts have frozen even my personal accounts. Ryan might have to drop out of USC. Sarah's private school is demanding payment. We don't even have enough for a security deposit on an apartment. Sir, Manuel ventured, considering their situation. Show me the Beverly Hills property listings. Manuel blinked, but complied. Julian's seized mansion appeared on screen, now listed for auction by federal authorities. The same house where Ryan and Sarah had once mocked their father's common profession. The auction's next week, Manuel reported. Given the circumstances, the property will likely sell well below market value. Have our Real estate team prepare a bid, Edward said, his voice neutral, though his eyes held a glint Manuel recognized from their biggest deals. And contact Gerard Mahoney. Tell him to prepare the paperwork for establishing a charitable foundation. Understanding dawned on Manuel's face. A shelter for victims of financial fraud? Fitting, don't you think? The house Julian used to showcase his stolen wealth, transformed into a refuge for those he destroyed. Another series of notifications lit up the screens. Sarah's latest Instagram story showed her packing designer clothes into cardboard boxes. Ryan's university email confirmed his enrollment was under review due to unpaid fees. Olivia's attempts to reach out now included a desperate message to Brad Rivas, pleading for an introduction to her ex-husband. Your children, Manuel said carefully. They're trying every channel to reach you. Yes. Edward turned from the window. And soon they'll understand something about karma. Have Flora Watson prepare for Mrs. Sanders' inevitable visit. She'll try to come in person once all other avenues fail. What should Flora tell her? Nothing yet, but have an envelope ready. Just a single piece of paper with a Bitcoin address and transaction record. Manuel's tablet chimed with another update. Ryan's voicemail is making rounds on social media. The press is starting to notice the contrast. Julian Sanders' stepchildren begging for help from the father they rejected. Perfect timing for the Forbes article, wouldn't you say? The financial advisor studied his client's composed expression. This was Edward Carter at his most formidable. Not angry, not vengeful, but methodically orchestrating a lesson his family would never forget. Should I have Gerard begin drafting the will changes as well? Yes. The foundation will need proper funding. Edward returned to his desk, where a small photo frame held the only remaining image of his children from years ago, before wealth and status had poisoned their hearts. Let's show them what real success looks like. As Manuel left to execute the plans, another wave of notifications arrived. Each one a digital reminder of his family's desperation, each message more frantic than the last. Edward let them accumulate, unmuted and unread, like gathering storm clouds before the deluge. The sun set over Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the office where a former mechanic sat planning his masterpiece of karmic justice. In his private garage below, beside the Tesla he rarely drove, his old toolbox waited a reminder that some lessons about honest work and true value come at a devastating price. The Forbes article landed with the precision of a calculated strike. Flora Watson, Edward's executive assistant, watched the digital metrics explode across her monitors as the story went viral. From mechanic to crypto billionaire trended across every platform. The headline accompanied by a striking photo of Edward in a bespoke suit, standing before his blockchain empire's headquarters. Mr. Carter, Flora's voice carried through the intercom. Mrs. Sanders is in the lobby. She's quite insistent. Through the security feed, Edward watched his ex-wife pace the marble floors. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly manicured appearance. Olivia's haunted eyes darted between her phone, displaying the Forbes article, and the elevator that could take her to her ex-husband's office. Security standing by, Flora added. Should I have them escort her out? No. Edward adjusted his tie, the same one he wore in the Forbes photo. Follow the protocol we discussed. Flora emerged from her desk, her approach measured as she faced Olivia. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sanders, but Mr. Carter isn't available. However, he asked me to give you this. The cream-colored envelope felt heavy in Olivia's trembling hands. She tore it open, revealing a single page containing a Bitcoin address and transaction record. Her eyes widened as she processed the numbers. This is impossible, Olivia whispered, sinking into a lobby chair. All these years. The records are quite clear, Flora replied, her tone professional. That wallet has been active since 2010, long before the divorce. The security feed captured Olivia's crumpling expression as realization dawned. Every sneering comment about her ex-husband's profession, every dismissal of his crypto investments, every moment their children mocked his common work, all while he quietly built a fortune that dwarfed Julian's stolen wealth. Please, Olivia stood, her composure cracking. I need to speak with him. Ryan's university deadline is tomorrow. Sarah's school, we're sleeping in a motel. Mr. Carter's schedule is fully booked, Flora responded, gesturing to a wall screen displaying news coverage of his latest blockchain security initiative. Perhaps you've seen the announcements about his charitable foundation? The elevator dinged, revealing Brad Rivas carrying prototype designs for their newest security protocol. He faltered at the sight of Olivia, but quickly recovered. Mrs. Sanders? He nodded, then turned to Flora. Is he ready for the foundation meeting? Yes. The legal team is already upstairs. With the paperwork, Flora replied, her words deliberate. They're finalizing the trust for underprivileged youth education. Olivia's phone buzzed. Another desperate text from Sarah about her school's final warning. The contrast between her current reality and the empire her ex-husband had built struck her like a physical blow. The article, it says he's been working with major crypto exchanges, advising on security protocols. All while we thought. Success takes many forms, Mrs. Sanders, Flora replied, picking up the Forbes magazine from her desk. Edward's cover photo captured the quiet confidence of a man who'd built something real, some less obvious than others. Through the security feed, Edward watched Olivia clutch the envelope containing proof of his early Bitcoin investments, the same investments she had mocked years ago at their kitchen table. The lobby television played a financial news segment featuring Iris Casey discussing his rise. What makes the Edward Carter story remarkable isn't just the wealth. It's the foundation of honest work it's built upon. While others chase quick riches, he combined traditional business ethics with blockchain innovation. Olivia's gaze fixed on the screen, seeing her ex-husband through new eyes. The man she had discarded for someone more sophisticated had transformed into a titan of a new financial era. When she started, then steadied herself. When did he first buy the Bitcoin? According to public blockchain records, Brad answered, unable to resist, around the same time you told him to stick to fixing cars. The elevator dinged again. This time, Hope Daniels emerged, now wearing a director's badge for Edward's charitable organization. She paused at the sight of Olivia, their roles dramatically reversed from the days when Olivia had been Julian's prestigious wife. The foundation board is waiting, Hope informed Flora, purposefully avoiding Olivia's gaze. They're excited about the plans for educational initiatives in blockchain technology. Olivia stared at the transaction record in her hands, proof that while she had chased status through Julian's fraudulent wealth, her ex-husband had quietly revolutionized digital finance. Flora, Edward's voice came through the intercom, knowing Olivia would hear. Please remind the board that our mission is helping those who've lost everything to financial fraud. We need to ensure the shelter opens on schedule. The words hung in the air as Olivia realized the full scope of his plans. Her phone buzzed again. Ryan's latest plea for help competing with news alerts about his father's billion-dollar empire. Mrs. Sanders, Flora's voice softened slightly. I believe you've received everything Mr. Carter wanted to share. The security team stepped forward, a clear signal. Olivia clutched the envelope, her last connection to the fortune she had unknowingly walked away from years ago. As the lobby doors closed behind her, the screens above displayed Edward's latest accomplishment. His blockchain security firm's stock soaring as investors recognized the value of what he had built. Real value, not the illusions Julian had sold them. Through it all, Edward watched silently from his office. His old toolbox from his mechanic days was displayed prominently beside his cutting-edge crypto mining rigs, a reminder that true worth comes from building something honest, something real. The Forbes article continued to spread across social media, each share a digital echo of the lesson Olivia was learning too late. Sometimes the greatest wealth lies in what others are too proud to see. The auctioneer's gavel fell with a decisive crack. Sold to the Carter Foundation for Financial Education, he announced. Julian Sanders seized Beverly Hills Mansion, once a monument to fraudulent wealth, had a new owner. Iris Casey captured the moment for her follow-up article, her camera catching Edward's composed expression as he signed the closing documents. Around them, former Jefferson and Company clients watched with mixed emotions as the property changed hands. The shelter will accommodate up to 50 families affected by financial fraud, Edward announced to the gathered press. Our focus is providing not just housing, but education in financial literacy and blockchain technology. Gerard Mahoney, his attorney, distributed press packets detailing the foundation's mission. The facility will open next month, he explained, deliberately avoiding mention of the property's former owners. We're already reviewing applications from affected families. From across the street, partially hidden behind a news van, Olivia watched the proceedings. Her designer handbag was gone, replaced by a worn leather purse. Behind her, Ryan and Sarah lingered uncertainly, their former home now transformed into a symbol of their fall. Mr. Carter, a reporter called out, your own children are victims of this fraud. Will they be eligible for the shelter services? A hush fell over the crowd. Edward adjusted his tie, the same one from the Forbes photo shoot. The foundation's board will review all applications without bias. However, I've made other arrangements regarding my personal legacy. Gerard stepped forward, producing a stack of legal documents. I've been authorized to announce changes to Mr. Carter's estate planning. The primary beneficiaries will be the charitable foundation and a trust dedicated to providing technical education for underprivileged youth. The implications weren't lost on anyone present. Ryan's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering on the sidewalk as he processed the news. Sarah's attempt to live stream the moment on Instagram faltered as tears blurred her vision. Brad Rivas guided a group of tech students through the mansion's newly renovated West Wing. This will be our coding lab, he explained. We're teaching blockchain development, cryptography, and financial technology tools for building legitimate wealth. Hope Daniels, now the foundation's outreach director, organized the first group of families preparing to move in. Each resident will participate in our education program, she announced, standing where Julian had once hosted lavish parties. We're turning a symbol of fraud into a beacon of hope. Iris Casey moved through the crowd, gathering quotes for her piece. The contrast is powerful, she noted into her recorder. A mechanic's honest work transformed into a crypto empire, now reaching back to help those destroyed by fraudulent finance. Renovation crews worked efficiently, replacing gaudy decorations with practical facilities. Every mirror that had once reflected Olivia's social climbing now showed the faces of fraud victims finding new purpose. Each room where Ryan and Sarah had flaunted their privilege became a classroom for underprivileged students learning digital finance. Your documentary crew is ready, Flora Watson informed Edward, gesturing toward the camera team, setting up in the mansion's former ballroom. Edward nodded, straightening his jacket. The cameras rolled as he delivered his message. Success isn't about the money you have, but the character you build. Some lessons come too late. Outside, Olivia watched her former neighbors arrive with their children, not for a social gathering, but for shelter intake interviews. The valet stand where Julian's Mercedes had once parked now held a sign. Free financial literacy classes. Evening sessions available. Ryan made one final attempt, approaching Brad near the entrance. Please, just tell him we understand now. We were wrong. Applications for the education program are available online, Brad replied, his tone professional. The foundation reviews each case individually. Sarah's social media followers watched her last post from the property, not as a privileged teen showing off her luxury lifestyle, but as a humbled young woman facing the consequences of misplaced values. As the sun set over Beverly Hills, the mansion's lights illuminated a new reality. Where Julian had once showcased stolen wealth, homeless families found refuge. Where Olivia had hosted social climbers, students learned about honest work and digital innovation. Where Ryan and Sarah had sneered at their father's profession, young people discovered the value of building something real. In the private garage of his penthouse across town, Edward placed his old toolbox beside his Tesla. The tools were worn but honest, like the hands that had used them to build an empire while others chased illusions. He picked up a wrench, its weight familiar in his calloused palm, a reminder that true success leaves room for neither pride nor pretense, only the quiet satisfaction of work well done. The security feed showed his ex-family finally leaving the property, their shoulders bent under the weight of understanding. Behind them, the mansion's new sign gleamed. Carter Foundation for Financial Education. Building futures through digital literacy. Their request for reconciliation would go unanswered. Their place in his will was now occupied by those who understood the value of honest work. In the end, the mechanic they dismissed had engineered not just his rise, but their most important lesson. Karma, like blockchain, keeps an immutable record of every transaction. A decade had passed since the Carter Foundation transformed Julian Sanders' Beverly Hills mansion into a beacon of hope. The Los Angeles Times' 10th anniversary feature opened with a striking comparison, a split image of the property, then and now. On one side, Julian Sanders' gaudy showcase of stolen wealth. On the other, a thriving educational center that had helped thousands rebuild their lives. 10 years of transformation. The Carter legacy read the headline of Iris Casey's latest piece. Now editor-in-chief of Financial Dynamics magazine, she sat in her office reviewing archive footage for an upcoming documentary. Julian Sanders, once the toast of Beverly Hills society, appeared on screen in his prison jumpsuit during a parole hearing. Denied for the third time, Iris narrated. The man who orchestrated one of the largest Ponzi schemes in Los Angeles history continues serving his 25-year sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Lompoc. The camera panned to Olivia Sanders, Julian's last victim of deception. The footage showed her leaving a small apartment in Van Nuys, her once perfect appearance replaced by the worn look of someone who had learned life's hardest lessons. She now worked as a receptionist at a local dental office, her executive assistant credentials tainted by her association with the Jefferson and Company scandal. Mrs. Sanders declined our request for an interview, Iris noted in her article. Sources say she still attends weekly financial literacy classes at a community center, though notably not at the Carter Foundation, where her application was politely declined 5 years ago. Across town, in a bustling USC classroom, Professor Brad Rivas lectured on blockchain security. And that's why verification is crucial, he explained to his students. Just ask Ryan Carter Sanders, though you'll have to visit the downtown branch of AutoZone to do it. The classroom rippled with understanding. Ryan's fall from privileged university student to auto parts store clerk had become a cautionary tale in Brad's lectures. After losing his USC enrollment, Ryan had struggled through community college, his dreams of following Julian's footsteps in a high finance shattered by the reality of his stepfather's crimes. Sarah's story took a different turn. The security feed at the Carter Foundation occasionally caught her attending public blockchain seminars, sitting quietly in the back. Her Instagram influence had evaporated with her family's wealth, but she had slowly rebuilt a modest following by sharing stories of financial responsibility and the dangers of material obsession. The foundation has graduated over 5,000 students from its crypto education program, Hope Daniels reported during the anniversary celebration. As outreach director, she had watched families rebuild their lives through honest work and digital literacy. Many of our earliest residents now work in legitimate financial technology firms. Edward's empire had grown beyond cryptocurrency. The Carter blockchain security protocol had become the industry standard, protecting digital assets worth billions. But his old auto repair shop remained operational, now serving as both a working garage and a training facility for vocational students learning to combine traditional skills with emerging technology. The most valuable lesson, Manuel Lamb explained to a group of foundation trustees, isn't about getting rich. It's about building something real. The financial advisor had watched his clients' wealth multiply, but more importantly, he had seen the impact of karma delivered through calculated kindness. Oliver Fink, retired from active mechanics, but still a regular at the shop, often shared stories with new apprentices. I remember when he worked under these same lifts, he'd say, pointing to where Edward had first checked his crypto wallet. Character shows in how you handle both wrenches and wealth. In her corner office at the Times, Iris reviewed recent photographs. Flora Watson, still Edward's executive assistant, appeared in several, coordinating the foundation's expanding initiatives. Gerard Mahoney's legal team had just finished establishing the 20th regional chapter of the education program. The most poignant image showed an unexpected detail: Sarah volunteering at a foundation event, not as a Carter but as an anonymous helper, learning the value her father had tried to teach years ago. Her application to the foundation's mentorship program sat pending on Hope's desk, marked for review. Through it all, Edward Carter maintained his dual legacy. The Forbes Blockchain 50 cover showed him in another impeccable suit, but his garage still saw him every Saturday, teaching young mechanics about both carburetors and cryptocurrency. The mansion changed more than just its owners, Enrique Avery noted in his FBI retirement speech. The former investigator had joined the foundation's board, using his experience to help other fraud investigators. It changed how we view success. The documentary footage ended with a quiet scene. Olivia walking past the foundation's gates, pausing to watch a group of students learning about digital finance in what was once her luxury dining room. The camera caught her expression, not bitter but finally understanding. In the foundation's main hall, where Julian had once hosted champagne galas, a simple plaque carried Edward's message: true wealth builds others up. False wealth tears everything down.